Hi everybody. So I'll use English. So for this, so we're from ShopBack, and we started in Singapore. So I think for customers, they know us as a platform whereby they can get cash back. So just a show of hands, who has booked from Booking.com before here? Booking.com. Okay, that's a few. Agoda. So we work with some of these partners, right? And on a platform model, what we do is actually from the customer's point of view, they're able to get cash back when they shop through our platform. So we redirect customers from our platform and our user base over to them. And then in return, they give us a commission for every order that we bring to them. So that's on the customer's point of view. But I think today, I want to share a bit more about how it happens on the merchant side, behind the scenes, as well as how I think we expanded from Singapore to the rest of Southeast Asia. And we could share a bit more about some of the mistakes we have made. And hopefully, this helps different Taiwanese companies as they hope to expand in other markets in Southeast Asia. So I'll share a bit more. So as I mentioned just now, we take users from our user base over to the merchants. So we work with both cross-border as well as local merchants. And I think people sign up for us because they are online shoppers themselves. And therefore, we have a big community of online shoppers on our base. And so I think for the customer's point of view, they use us so they get cash back. But I think for merchants, people always ask us, why do merchants want to work with you? And why do they want to give this extra amount to the users? And I think that's a big selling point for our model, right? So what we do is that we're able to cross-sell and upsell to different merchants. So for example, somebody buys an airplane ticket, we're able to push and get you to buy a hotel stay as well. Same for travel insurance, same for activities as well. And that's also the same for other cross-border stuff. So let's say we see that you're actually shopping on certain platforms. They are cross-border in fashion. We actually could push to you some local platforms as well. Because you want to buy something that is fashionable. And sometimes actually you'll be surprised that actually some of the local platforms have pretty good products as well that can match cross-border merchants as well. So we try to see how we can further upsell and get customers to buy more. I think one of the speakers shared just now, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to expand the pool of people that are going to shop online. So what I think there's this saying, I think my friend told me before, right? When someone buys Netflix, he doesn't buy Netflix for all the videos. He likes one of the particular videos, and he decides to subscribe to Netflix so that he can get access to that particular show that he's watching. And from there, he gets to see other parts or other movies. So I think that's the same way that we're trying to come from this problem. So we've seen that actually in Southeast Asia, as a percentage of retail spend, very few percent is attached to the online world. So I think in Singapore it's about 3 to 4%. Outside Singapore, you're looking at sub 1%. So most people, or 99% of people outside Singapore, actually are spending their money offline. And it's, in Singapore, there'll be 97%. I think in Taiwan it's 12%. So that means 88% of people still want to spend on the offline space. And what we try to do is how do we create a platform whereby we're able to reward people for shopping online. So if they're going to make the same purchase and they want to go offline and make that purchase, why don't take another step at trying to do the same purchase online, right? You get some rewards for doing it online, and it's actually more convenient. It's just that maybe you had not tested it before. And so what we try to do is to have multi-verticals. Hopefully one of the movies or one of the verticals is something that catches the eye of that user. And from there, we are able to upsell to them so that they will try other portions. So I'll share a bit more about the journey of ShopBack, right? When we started on the extreme left-hand corner. That was all we had. We were just marketplaces, and we were just selling products. So that gave us a particular TA or target audience that we could reach out to. But over time, we decided that, hey, we got to expand this, because if not, we're just reaching out to people that are already buying on e-commerce marketplaces. So we added brands as well. So we worked directly with the fashion brands, as well as we added travel. And so that's more of breadth as well as depth, whereby we add both airlines, hotels, activities, and even travel insurance. And recently, I think we added a new vertical, whereby it's lifestyle. So lifestyle is all-encompassing. Anything we cannot put into a particular category, we put under lifestyle. So it could be groceries, it could be games. So recently worked with, I think, App Store. So if like anyone plays Pokemon Go and you buy coins, you can get cash back as well. If I think downright to even if you are using 17 and you're 买花, and you want to give the person, you can get cashback as well. So what we try to do is really expand the whole category that people can shop online from. And hopefully once, based on the data that we can see, let's say somebody is actually a ride user, so he's constantly using Uber. This means that actually he's actually high propensity to want to buy things online as well, through the app, right? He's very used to on-demand calling or buying a ride. We actually can upsell him other stuff, right? So then this is beneficial for all guys in the ecosystem because we're able to upsell more and more for them. So that's what we've been trying to do. We hope to expand to more verticals. So with this, I think with this model, we do about 300 million expected for this year. And hopefully we can try to push more sales for our merchants because our model is very simple. We only take a commission only when an order is made. So if let's say we do a lot of pushing and there's no order, it's actually bad for us. We don't make any money and we can't pay the salaries and there's no loss to the merchant, right? So I'll share a bit more. So for ShopBack, I think we were the last to launch in the cashback field. So this model is actually not new. I'll share a bit more about this model, this cashback model. It started in the US and then there's also in the rest of the markets. But what we've seen is that by almost most metrics that we use, ShopBack has actually sort of became the biggest player in Southeast Asia for this vertical. And what we hope to be able to share later on is really what are some of the mistakes we made, some of the learnings we have, and some of our thought process in how do we try to overcome the Southeast Asian market. Because we're not the first guys to come up with this. Instead, we replicated the model, this global model to Southeast Asia because nobody was doing it, as well as try to adapt it to ensure that it fits the local norms as well. So this concept of localization, right? And we'll try to use some personal experiences of what we ran through so that we can share how our experience was with this localization. Because I think for cross-border, I think a lot of people always talk about localization, which is actually very important. So you go to a place and then you want to localize it and make it as local as possible. But I think one part maybe, I would like to add to this discussion is really localization. How can you add some global perspectives as well? Because if let's say you're just going to do something that is purely global, you take it lock, stock, barrel and put it into one place, actually what's stopping another global player from doing that? So because you only have a global angle. Now if I flip it and you only do a local angle, right? So everything you're trying to do is just to localize it and do it as local as possible. What's stopping a local player from replicating your exact same model and then fighting you head on? So that's where I think this concept of localization might be important, whereby you bring in not only just global plays, but as well as have some local plays as well. And that gives you a differentiation when you try to fight both local and global player. Because as you grow, you're going to have more copycats or people that try to come into your turf. And that's normal and that's part of business. So I think localization could be one way that we look at it when we try to do cross-border market expansion. So first one, I think from a global mindset, before we started, I think for cashback, there were a lot of evil and a lot of problems that people had with the model. People asking, you're giving free money, are you sure somebody wants to work with you? You're a new startup, are you sure the big e-commerces want to work with you? So then I think then we took on a very global perspective, right? We asked ourselves, so with all these questions that are thrown to us, really what is, whether can this model really work in Southeast Asia? Because many people have tried it, but it's not worked in Southeast Asia before us. But then we took a global perspective and we saw that, hey, this is actually a globally proven model, right? There are two unicorns that are doing this exact same model, one in the US, one in China. Coincidentally, both funded by Rakuten, but this proves that this model is actually one that is doable, right? And in every other market, I think UK, EU, there's Quidco, even Latin America, which is very similar to Southeast Asia in terms of the growth of e-commerce, there is such a model. So it shows from a global perspective that this is doable. The issue might be execution. The issue might be how do you roll this out. So then using that global perspective, we went ahead with this idea because for us, we have the hypothesis that people around the world are actually roughly about the same. You might have to localize the model a little, but actually most people interact in the same way. They use classifieds, they buy on B2C models, they use ride sharing, and people around the world tend to operate roughly similarly with some local differences. Secondly, then from the global perspective, you look at the local perspective when we consider the business model we want to bring cross-border, right? Locally, we try to see whether is this something that cashback, is it something that the local market is actually used to, right? Or is it something totally foreign to them? If you tell them cashback, they're like, oh, I don't understand. What are you talking about? Then we found out and we look at the surveys and even the types of credit cards that they are pushing. Cashback is something that the local market understands. It's something that they know. Maybe now we're going to use a different medium because we're doing online, but it's something that they understand. So on two fronts, the credit cards are already pushing them. The second one is that this cashback model is, or these rewards or loyalty models actually done by a lot of offline players. I think so. Our similar models would be like the points models. I think a similar one in Taiwan would be like Happy Go. Right? In Singapore, we had tons of these guys. So it proves that the model works. So from a global and a local perspective, I sort of give credentials to this business model that we're trying to push. So that's what I'm talking about in the local and global globalization, whereby we try to look at both perspectives, both from the global and the local one, before we make a decision and try to get a good decision out of two perspectives that we have. The next one we try to think about is, this is more from a local perspective. When we went into the local market, we went to track all the e-commerce guys spend, because we used to be from the e-commerce world, and we try to rank what are the amounts of money that they actually spend their money on. And then we roughly do a rough calculation of their cost per order. Because the first thing we know is when we go to a new market, the first question I think they're going to ask us is, why should I use a new marketing channel when I already have so many marketing channels? So then we need to find our tier route or entry point. Why it's something that we're different from the rest of the guys when we go into a local market. And so we went to trace back all the marketing channels, the major ones that you use, Facebook, Google, and all the rest. And then we do a rough calculation of their cost per order. And then we try to benchmark. And so we are able to go there with a value proposition to say, hey, we are the cheapest guy in town because there's no risk. You don't pay for clicks that don't convert because we only charge you for every order. So if there's an order, you give me a commission. If there's a click, but no order, then, good for you, it's free for you, right? So that was the angle that we went with it. So that was a very local angle. It was from a grounds-up perspective. We look at our numbers, try to understand where they were spending their money, and why would they want to shift some of their budget over to us. So that was how we took from a local perspective. We try to look at it on a global front as well. Because these guys, it maybe could be a Southeast Asian problem whereby these marketing channels are just predominantly more expensive in Southeast Asia. But maybe globally it's cheaper. But when we look at global numbers as well, same thing. This it might be other than Facebook and Google, the rest might be slightly different. But same thing, they were actually predominantly quite expensive, mainly because they're on the bidding system. So people fight to push up the price. Might be good for the companies, not so good for the merchants paying the money. So then using this perspective, global and local perspective, we decided, hey, we might have a pitch here whereby it might get some credentials with the merchants, because anything that's cheaper, merchants are always willing to try, as long as there's no risk for them. The other one I think we did when we did cross-border growth is that we made a point to always have local officers and local teams. I think I talked to quite a few Taiwanese startups as well that they are interested to come to Southeast Asia. And for us, very importantly, is we always want to ensure that the head of the country is local. We have a regional team based out of Singapore. So they run most of the product, most of the technical portion. But I think one thing that's very different is that they don't know the local norms as well as local. So we take a very different hypothesis from maybe a lot of the MNCs that come to town. We believe that the top guy in the market must be local. If not, he will not understand what are the market norms and what are the problems. And if we are going to run it off Singapore, then you're going to take a very Singapore perspective and try to implant it on the local countries. And to be very frank, if you send a Singaporean to any of these countries, I think the odds of succeeding is going to be very low without a local team. So therefore, I think it's very important for us. Every country, we ensure that there is a local team that we are trying to push. And the second point we try to ensure is that this guy has, when we go to a new market, the guys that we hire have experience in the local markets. So these guys must have worked, if you see their experience, they most probably worked in an e-commerce, local e-commerce player before. This means that this guy has not only a local, but he has local domain knowledge. He has done sort of e-commerce or digital play before, and therefore we hypothesize that there's a high chance or higher chance that we think that he'll be able to succeed. So if you see the hires that we made tend to be all from local e-commerce plays before. So first, local, who have studied overseas but come back, but pure blue local, that's one. Secondly, is must have worked in a major local e-commerce company. So I think that has worked out pretty well for us. We indirectly did an A/B test. There was once we did not do so, and it didn't work out too well for us. So from then on, we took on a very hard stand that this is, when we expand in different markets, this is one of the learnings we had. And if you ask me, I think this is one of the best learnings. that we are doing, and most helpful for our expansion in the local markets. And so of course, right, I mean, that's a hypothesis. So we try to look at data. So we try to look at the different countries as we launch, and we are able to spot like there's a spurt in growth every time we onboard a country general manager. So at the start, before the country general manager comes for that one quarter, there's no much difference. But what we see is a stark difference in orders after that. So our hypothesis is that they are able to understand the marketing norms much better, and they are able to roll out different campaigns that are much better for the local markets, and thus are able to grow the numbers better for us. So I think both on the data front as well as on the hypothesis, I think from our experience, cross-border has to be done by a local that is vested to work with you, and we don't believe in the remote or hands-off model whereby you try to control it from another country or a regional team. I think the regional team can assist, but most probably you always need guys on the ground that understand the market best. The other one, I think this is sort of like another experience that we had. So we always try to ensure that the teams spend together, both the global teams, the regional teams, as well as the local teams. So and this is an example, most of our countries started from Airbnbs. I don't know if it's legal here in Taiwan, but in all Southeast Asian countries, we start from Airbnbs. So we go there and we hire a team, and from there, I think we live together for a while. We try to share our perspectives, both personally as well as on the working front, and then on their side, they try to execute it. So that helps us bring, I think, both local and global perspectives to it. So they still run their show as per usual as the local team, but I think the global team is able to, number one, have close interaction with them for a short period of time, but at the same time also able to work closely with them and share them the learning. So sort of helps us to build up the handover much faster for us. Yep, and another one I think that has worked well for us in localization is with the media. So we're in the business that's slightly different from other e-commerces. So I think e-commerces is about getting good price as well as good service and being able to keep the customer. I think for us, we're in the business of giving away free money. So I mean, it sounds like an easy business, but it's actually quite difficult. So the biggest problem we actually face when we launch in a new country is people don't believe that ShopBack is giving away free money. So that is actually something that we have to convince the people, right? So think of it, you see a Facebook ad. So a lot of companies try to launch using platforms. So they go on Facebook, they do a lot of ads, they try to push it out. But I think the main problem they're going to face is that when I see a Facebook ad, the credibility I'm going to give it is going to be lesser than one I see in the media. And that was one of the major learnings for us. Even when we do Facebook ads and we do A/B testing, one from the media and one our own ads, the difference on the ROI is much different. And what we've seen is that just going there and remotely controlling and just doing marketing campaigns has not worked out too well, mainly because of our model. It's hard to convince people you want to give them free money just because they shop through you. And so what we try to do is enlist the help of the media. We have partnerships with the media, try to have interviews, do more sharings, try to see how we can bring some perspectives as well. And we always see increases every time we try to do media pushes. And that has, I think, been a major stem hole of how we launch in different local countries. We always try to ensure that we keep the media intact as well with us so that we can share information and things that they might find newsworthy that they could report. So that has helped us get more credibility in the place. Because I think for us, very different from other platforms is that for us, we sort of work on the model of sort of a trust. Because think of from it from a customer's point of view. He comes to your website. Number one, you tell him you're going to give him free money. Number two, to cash out the money, he needs to give you your bank account. And then number three, after he buys, he needs to wait for the cashback to come. It's not immediate because you could return the product. So the element of trust needed is very, very high in our model. So using that, I think one way we have tried to localize it is really working with the media teams, try to see how we can work with them, and that has really helped us quite well. So if you're considering going to localize in the different markets, the media might actually be a very interesting partner that you could work with. Local exceptions. I think this one goes from country to country, but I think one thing we did differently. So I talked about localization. We took global ideas, we copied or replicated a model done by Ebates and Fundly. But I think we also noticed that there are actually local exceptions that we have to cater for. So when they launched their sites, I think in 1999 and 2006, respectively, ride sharing was never a thing back then. Back then it was just e-commerce and people were just trying to get others to buy on platforms. It was B2C, it was C2C. But one thing we noticed in coming years as we launch in these 2 to 3 years, ride sharing was something that was very, very big. And therefore we try to see, other than giving cash back when you take an Uber ride or just giving cash back when you take a Grab ride or Gojek, what else can we do that we can value add to the ride sharing platform, right? Because we're trying to do more than just cash back. And what we notice is that every time you take a ride, because it's so competitive in Southeast Asia, even at this same point when I try to call Uber or Grab or Gojek, the price is actually different, even though I'm going to the same place. It's just due to their algorithm as well as their search pricing. So one example is this. I just take address that we put there, Marina Bay Sands and Changi Airport, and what we do is we try to categorize all the different ride sharing companies. So there are at least 4 or 5 in Southeast Asia. There's the Uber. I think you guys are familiar. There's Grab, which is the localized version of Uber in Southeast Asia. There's Gojek. There's also taxi companies themselves. So there's Bluebird, there is Comfort. So what we try to do is we try to aggregate them, and so that when someone searches for it, we tell them the cheapest price. So now from Marina Bay Sands, which is like Orchard Road, the central of Singapore, going to Changi Airport, the price differential is actually quite high. At UberX, it's about $19. However, if you use Grab, it's at $25. So the difference just on one ride is $6. So on top of cashback, people are also able to get the best price. Because at the end of the day, you don't really care which ride-sharing company you use. You just care whether can you get from point A to point B. And so therefore, we try to add local exceptions to this. And we're actually going to do this for more verticals as well. So user gets not only cashback, but gets value as well, right? So he gets cashback for rides. He also gets the cheapest ride. We try to aggregate this for other verticals as well. I don't know if you tried this before, but you could try for food delivery. You might notice that for the exact same restaurant, if you use 2 different food delivery companies, they actually give you different pricing and different timings. This is because, it's not because of the margins, it's mainly because of, our hypothesis is that it's mainly because of the riders that they have. So for example, if I have 100 riders, but most of them are on the east side, and they're not on the west side, then actually from the west side, the time is going to be longer for me when I deliver the products to you, from company to company. So it really depends on the density of the riders. So the exact same food store you're going to buy might come at a longer time and even more expensive. So what we try to do is how can we make the best decision for the customer, right? And on top of that, I think cashback is just a conduit for us to do so. The other one is, I think, cash out options. I think very similar to e-commerce that we face. E-commerce is about paying, but I think it's about how can customers pay you smoothly. For us, I think we are on the opposite side. How can we pay our customers fast, right? What they want us to pay them fast. So I can share a story. Before we launched this, I was actually a user of the model that we replicated, I think in the US. So, but their cash out options is only one. So I could buy something from Singapore in the US, maybe if I buy something from Amazon or ShopBob or ASOS, and I get cash back in the account. But there's one problem. Their only cash out option is check. So the only way I can get my money is by check. So I think I had about $40 to $50 is by check. But Singapore has cross-border checks fees. So I think I had to spend $10 to $15 on the cross-border fee check. In the end, the amount I have left from the cashback is not much. So that actually was something that was interesting for us. So we implemented local cash out. We ensured that user does not have to go through experience of using a check. Because to be honest, I can't remember the last time I used a check after Ebates, right? So what we try to do is how can we make it as local as possible. So we have bank transfer, whereby you can get your money right away. The other interesting story was Indonesia, whereby we noticed a lot of accounts were cashing out to the same bank account. So to us, straight away in our data team is, these guys are fraudsters. Why would all these guys with different handphone numbers cash out to the same bank account? And then we made some phone calls to them, and we found actually what happens is that not all of them have a bank account. So I think for Indonesia, the bank account percentage, I think is about 20%. So you have 80% of people that might not be using, have their own bank account. So therefore, what they were doing, they were actually sharing the bank account of one of their family members, right? So therefore, because we use 2 factors to differentiate fraud, one is bank account, one is phone number. But these guys all had different phone numbers. It's just that they were using the same bank account. And then that was where we decided, okay, we have to do more to ensure that people can get their cash out much faster. So then we cash it out into their phones. So unlike Taiwan, whereby you pay every month, I think in the rest of Southeast Asia, other than Singapore and maybe Malaysia, people pay out, people load money to their phone every week or every month. So they don't pay on a monthly fee. It's prepaid. You pay the money, and then once it's finished, you pay the next load. So we use this system, and then we can take the money and directly pump it into their account. So it makes it much easier for the customer. Yep. I share a bit more about Taiwan as we launch into Taiwan. So I think the interesting part about Taiwan is that we focus a lot on the local merchants. So if you can see on our site, almost everybody except maybe Agoda and Booking.com are all local merchants and Taobao. So what we try to do is, how can we localize here? So we try to get them to be able to push local merchants so that we can get the local shoppers. That's one. But I think the second portion is also, we try to add cross-border merchants as well. So that's where I'll talk about localization, whereby we not only just go for the locals, but we should use the benefits we have as a global platform. So we brought in global players, I think, like our partners in Singapore, Apple, Nike, and try to help them expand in the rest of the markets. And so therefore, I think this localization goes both ways. One is being able to take perspectives from the global side, being able to validate them on the local front with localization. But at the same time, it could also be a business opportunity, which is now something that we're trying to implement. So I think one example would be how we work in Taiwan, whereby now we're helping some of the Taiwanese companies that want to expand to Southeast Asia. We help them push them in our local markets in Southeast Asia. So example would be like KKday and Dongjing Zuoyi, Toki Choi. So these are some things that I think if we take a very local perspective to cross-border expansion, I think that might actually be more helpful than just focusing solely on localization. And with that, I think I've crossed my time, but thanks for taking the time to listen to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joel from ShopBack.